Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar today. As usual, we are so thrilled to have you with us. We are going to be covering a new topic we've never covered before, and I heard Randy actually speak on this topic, and it is fantastic. And I am actually, surprised that more apartment owners don't know about these strategies that he's going to be talking about today. But before I hand it off to him, I'm going to start with my regular announcements here. We are recording this full webinar for you to view tomorrow. We will be sending it to you via email. We'll also be including the PowerPoint slides and our speakers' contact information so that you can follow up if you need to maybe ask more questions or get a little bit more specific guidance. We are going to have about an hour today, although we may go over if there are additional questions. So please, if you do have questions, put them in the question box, not the chat. The question box does allow us to really organize those questions and make sure that we don't miss a thing. So be sure to put your questions in the question box. So now a little bit about Mr. Land Trust, Randy Hughes. He is a full-time real estate investor who bought his first rental house in 1969. And after investing for 10 years, Randy decided to learn more about how to protect his investments and not be a target for frivolous lawsuits. Randy has testified as an expert witness in California and Illinois and has used land trusts in his business for more than 50 years to control more than 200 houses and other real estate. He now says he will never again own real estate in his own personal name. And we're going to talk about why that's not a good idea, right, Randy?
Right.
And his students have found it to just be too risky. So we welcome today America's #1 expert on the use of land trusts for real estate investors, Mr. Land Trust. Thank you for coming on and speaking to our group, Randy.
Thank you so much for inviting me and allowing me to talk to all these wonderful real estate investors. I love real estate investors. I like talking to them and interacting with them. I like the way they think. So this is certainly enjoyable for me. But let me just first cover the disclaimer. I always have to do that. There's telling you I'm not a lawyer or an accountant giving any accounting or legal advice. But you're about to discover how protecting your assets can actually cut your costs of real estate investing. And as you all know, as real estate investors, if you cut your costs, you increase your profits, right? So that's a good thing. You can make bigger profits when selling using a trust. You can eliminate the risk of selling notes or contracts. I suspect that we got a lot of people on this webinar today, and I suspect some of you are investors in the note business. Some of you are contract assigners. So certainly using a trust in those avenues of investing in real estate is a smart thing to do. Combining with the LLC. Now, this is a really kind of a mixed bag situation that I want to clear up. I use LLCs in my business, and I'm sure that just about everybody on this webinar has an LLC. But I do not use an LLC to hold the title. I use a trust to hold the title, and each property goes in its own separate trust. And the reason for that is a basic tenet of investing in any avenue, be it cash, stocks, bonds, real estate. A basic tenet of that type of investing is to separate your assets. You've all heard that. You don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? Grandma taught us that. And that's because if you crack one egg, you may crack them all. So you want to have them in separate baskets. So I want you to put each of your pieces of real estate in a separate trust. Then those trusts could be owned by one or more LLC as the beneficiary. So that's a structure that I'll give you a diagram on a little bit later in this presentation. But I've found this to work really well. It's been a great technique. And as of January 1st of this year, it became an even greater technique because of this stupid Corporate Transparency Act that I'm sure many of you are aware of. A new intrusion on our privacy that we can fight back with these trusts. You can't with corporations and LLCs. So Really don't have time to get into that today, but we've been talking a lot about that in my monthly training calls that you can participate in and get up to speed on that. Um, the other reason is, if you think about it, I mean, from a logical standpoint, let's say you have 10 apartment buildings and you put them all in one LLC, and there's a lawsuit on one property, has nothing to do with the other 9 buildings. A tenant sues or whatever it is, and they sue the owner of that building, and they win a judgment. Maybe it wasn't covered under your insurance. Maybe it exceeded your insurance limits. But bottom line is, they sue, they win, they get a judgment against the owner of the building. Who owns the building? Right, the LLC. And the LLC has 9 other assets in it that are now under that lien. So you just lost 10 buildings instead of one. You can't refinance, you can't sell until you resolve that lien or judgment that's been rendered against the owner, which is the LLC. Whereas if you have each property in a separate trust and you lose one, so be it. You can probably survive off your other 9 buildings, but you can't survive off of 0 buildings. So it's just not smart to put all your eggs in one basket. So please, just let me just tell you this. My goal today is to convince you to never buy real estate in your name again. Take title directly from the seller to your trust, so you're never in the chain of title. And if you're on the title now, get off as soon as you can. And that's what I'll teach you how to do. Get off that title. There are no benefits to being on the title. You get all the same benefits: appreciation, depreciation, all the same real estate benefits that we invest for. You'll get holding title in a trust, just the same as if you weren't holding title in a trust. So if all you get are risks for owning it in your name and no benefits, why would anybody do that? It's just crazy. Avoiding frivolous lawsuits. So what we're trying to do here, and we're not, let me clarify, I don't teach people how to use these trusts to try to avoid their responsibilities to life. If you've wronged somebody or hurt somebody, you should make it right. But as you know, our legal system is run amok. It's just not about who's right and who's wrong anymore. It's about who's got the smartest attorney or who's got the most money to run you out of court because you can't stay in the game. So we're trying to avoid these frivolous lawsuits. And let me give you a real life example of how this works. In the year 2000, I sold a house that I lived in with my wife and 2 daughters. And 6 months after closing, I got a letter from the buyer's attorney that said, "Dear Mr. Hughes, my buyer had to replace a air conditioning unit, some wood flooring, and all the toilets in the house. And if you'll just send us a check for $8,000, we won't sue you." I thought, what is this? I mean, I'm responsible for maintenance and repairs after I sell a property? This is crazy. But this is how contingency fee lawyers make their money, and their deadbeat clients make their money this way. So asset protection is something you have to do before you need it. It's kind of like you have insurance on your car, you have homeowners insurance. Why? Well, because your house may catch on fire, right? Or you may be in a car accident. Can you buy homeowners insurance on your house if the house is on fire? No. You can't go out and buy car insurance right after you had a wreck. So you are already thinking in the vein of being proactive in protecting your assets. Let's just transfer that thinking to your real estate investments, because they're going to be a much larger amount than your personal car or your personal residence. So my point here is, because I was prepared, I sent the attorney a letter back and I said, "Dear Mr. Lawyer, I didn't own the house." And then he sent me a letter back and said, "Well, my client told me that you lived in the house." Well, that was true. I did live in the house, but some people in America live in houses they don't own, right? So I sent him a letter back. I said, in his last letter to me, he said, "And if you'll just tell us who the owner was, who owned this trust? We won't sue you. So I sent him a letter and I said, dear Mr. Lawyer, um, number one, you really should be careful who you threaten to sue because there's such a thing as wrongful litigation. In other words, you can't sue somebody just because you want to. You got to have justification, or you give them justification to sue you back. So I said, that's my first piece of advice is you better watch out who you threaten to sue because I didn't own it. Number two, I don't know who the owner was. And the last sentence in my letter said, good luck finding the owner. And anybody want to guess what happened? Do I hear? Right. Nothing. He didn't even have the courtesy to send me a letter back. I mean, I was prepared. Here's what I think the conversation went on with his client that day. Well, Bob, this guy isn't going to be as easy to take advantage of as the last 5 people we sent these letters to. What do you want to do? If you want, I'll find out about this trust and I'll chase them down. But all I need you to do, Bob, is get your checkbook out, and write a check. It's only $10,000 to start. Send it, write it out to my escrow account, and I'll send you a letter every month telling you how many hours I chase this trust. And I imagine Bob's response was, well, wait a minute, I'm in this game to make money, not spend money. I'm not going to give you $10,000. Let's go sue somebody that owns real estate in their name. And that's exactly what they did. So that's kind of how the game is played, like it or not. And this helps you avoid frivolous lawsuits by just not being on the title. There are so many benefits. We don't even have time to talk about them all today. But so what's the tool of the smart real estate investor? Don't let it intimidate you. It's just a few pieces of paper. It's known in many places, like in California, they call it a title holding trust. In many states, they refer to it as an Illinois type land trust. That doesn't mean it's an Illinois trust. It's just like Illinois because Illinois is the granddaddy of land trust law. So Illinois has more statute and case law supporting the use of these trusts. But it's just a few pieces of paper. The first document is called a trust agreement. That's the contract between the trustee who holds title for you and the beneficiary. And how do we get property into the trust? We deed it into the trust in what's called a deed to trustee. Now, deed to trustee is very similar to what you already probably have experience with, like a warranty deed. But a deed to trustee not only states all the warranties that you're getting a good deed and good title, but it also says that the beneficial interest in this trust is personal property, not real estate. So once you put your real estate into this trust, you don't own it anymore. So quit telling people you own it because you don't. You own the trust. The trust owns the property. And we'll get into more of the reasons why that's to your benefit a little bit later in this presentation. So we need 2 people. We need a beneficiary and a trustee. Most real estate investors, I find, will make the beneficiary an LLC so they get that added asset protection benefit. But it could be an individual, a corporation, it could be a partnership, it could be 10 different real estate investors owning a tenth of the property, of the trust that owns the property. But that's all you need is a deed and trust and two parties, trustee and beneficiary, which can be, either party can be individuals or entities. And how much does it cost? I'm just telling you, you should have, if you got 10 apartment buildings, you should have 10 trusts. And you may say, gosh, Randy, that's great, but it's going to cost me a fortune. And it probably would if you have to hire an attorney to do it for you. They're going to charge you minimum $1,000. I refer some people to an attorney out of California. She charges $3,500 per trust. So it can get expensive. That's why it's important that you do it and learn how to do it yourself. And that's where I come in. I teach you how to do it because they're free. It doesn't cost anything to set up a trust. Like California is $800 a year for an LLC. Illinois, where I'm at, they just lowered it from $500, I think $300 for an LLC, but it's still pretty expensive if you're going to try to form an entity like that for each property. This way you can form an entity without any expense to you at all, and you'll understand it a lot better if you let me teach you how to do it. So what kind of property can we put into these trusts? All kinds of real estate. As you see here on the list in the slide, you can even put a mortgage in it, air rights, mineral rights, um, contracts for deed. I had a guy call me a couple of years ago from Kentucky, and he said, "I want to buy your home study course and learn how to create land trusts." And I said, "Great. What are you going to do with it?" He said, "Well, I've got 1,500 oil and gas leases here in Kentucky, and some of them are going to go boom, and some of them are going to go bust. So I don't want to put them all in one entity, so the bad ones infect the good ones." I said, "Yeah, that's smart." So he bought my home study course for $597. It created 1,500 land trusts. I figured if he'd hired an attorney and even got a discount, it would cost him $150,000 for that many land trusts. So he saved quite a bit of money doing it himself. Now, you might say, well, who can do this? Do I need an attorney to create this for me? No, you don't. You can do it yourself. Um, as an individual, your LLC can create a trust, a corporation, everything that's listed here. Um, and incidentally, if we have any attorneys on the call today, my course has been approved in some states for continuing education for lawyers to renew their license. But anybody and everybody can create these trusts. I wouldn't advise you to create them for other people unless you're a lawyer, but you can do it for yourself all day long with no problem. Why should you use a trust to make more money? Well, you get privacy and asset protection. Now, privacy is the first and cheapest form of asset protection we can do as real estate investors. Just not having our name on the deed will prevent a whole lot of problems in your life. You're going to make greater profits. These are excellent when they're combined with the LLC, as we mentioned before, making the LLC the beneficiary of the trust. They're free, and you can do it yourself with my personal instruction and forms. So why not, right? Who's not using this profit and privacy tool? Well, real estate investors who put their name on the title to real estate. Um, I get calls and emails all the time with people that said, "Yeah, I know I should have done it, Randy. You taught me how to, and I never got around to it. But now I just heard that I'm going to have a tenant suing me. What do I do?" And I say, it's really too late to do anything. Once you've been notified of a lawsuit, or have knowledge of a lawsuit coming your way, everything you do from that point on is suspect and can be reversed by a judge. So there's a statement in the asset protection world, and it goes like this: old and cold matters. And what that means is the older your documentation and the colder your documentation, the more it's going to hold up in court. So if you got a trust that was formed a year ago or 5 years or 10 years ago, it's going to be much more protecting of your assets than if you'd formed it yesterday because you found out yesterday you were being sued. Okay. Um, so hopefully you're going to join the club of smart real estate investors today. Stop owning real estate in your name, get off the deed as soon as possible, and take title in the future directly from the seller to your trust. Now, I will coach you through that first trust agreement. I want you to study the material. 9 out of 10 of your questions will be answered. But then if you want to send the trust agreement to me, we can look at it together and go through it and make sure it's exactly the way you want it. And then you'll have a template on your computer that you can literally create a trust in 5 minutes and forever at no cost. And most importantly, you can call me. I don't know if anybody does this anymore. I don't get this kind of service when I buy things from people, but, but I answer my phone. Um, if for any reason I don't, leave a message because I'm on the other line with a student and I'll call you right back. But I answer my phone 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7 days a week, Central Time, please. Central Time for all you folks out in California. But I give tremendous support because you'll probably have a question or two, and I want to be there for you. Now, this is interesting. I found this information in a magazine, and so I put it on the slide thinking it might influence you uh, as to who's getting sued in America these days. Who are at the top of the list? And here's the top seven. And you'll see us right up there as owners of real estate. If you own real estate in your name, that's a hard asset. It's hard to get rid of quickly. It's not like cash that just kind of can blow in the wind if you're getting sued. And that's why contingency fee lawyers and their deadbeat clients love to come after real estate investors because they have hard assets. Now, you may even find your personal situation more than once on this list, but what I find very interesting is the note at the bottom 97% of lawsuits filed do not go to trial. Well, what does that tell you? That tells me that probably only 3% of the lawyers in the United States know how to go to trial. The rest of them are professional settlers, right? They all settle. And my attorney ends up with all my money, and your attorney ends up with all your money. So we're both broke because you sued me or I sued you, and the lawyers have our money. It's unfortunately the way our legal system has developed, and I wish it hadn't, but that's how it is. So we have to deal with it. I'm really not here to scare you folks. I'm here to prepare you because if you're going to be in this business long term, like I have been over 5 decades, you're going to have an attack. It's guaranteed. In fact, it's kind of an oxymoron in our business that the the more successful you are, the greater target you are for a lawsuit. So everybody wants to be successful, but nobody wants to be a target for a lawsuit. Really, what we're talking about here are throwing out hurdles. Obviously, hurdles slow you down. And if I make it as difficult as possible to sue me and expensive for you to sue me over a frivolous issue, you'll probably not sue me or give up and go sue somebody else that isn't prepared. So I just want to prepare you for long-term success. It's one thing to make money in this business. It's a whole different thing to keep it long-term and have it when you get there. I mean, everybody's wanting to get into the retirement years with a nest egg. You got to do this along the way, so you don't lose it to some nefarious characters like these guys. Don't worry about Al Qaeda. Your number one threat today is a contingency fee lawyer. And let me ask you this. If all my home study course did was prevent you from sitting in front of these guys once in your life, would it be worth it? I suspect it would. It's very expensive to sit across the table from these guys. And it's just, you lose sleep, and it's just a negative thing. You could be out making money in the real estate business instead of wasting your time with this stuff. So I do a lot of speaking around the country and out of the country on this subject. I was out in California a few years back and went to lunch with some of my students. And this plate here on the left was on the car parked in front of us, BMW. And I said, "Oh my goodness, I got to take a picture of that." And the license plate on the bottom, Mr. Suam, is an attorney in my town. And he's known to sue anybody at any time for any reason. He just sues everybody constantly. Um, so it got me to thinking, who's looking out for me? And more importantly, who's looking out for you? So I made a list of everybody looking out for me and you. And here it is. Nobody. You see, folks, the deal here is you got to look out for yourself and your family. Nobody else in the family is going to do it. Nobody's even going to understand how to do it. It's your job to do it. Now, I have an attorney. He's a really smart guy. I use him on every transaction, and I highly recommend that you always use a real estate attorney when you're doing your transactions for a lot of reasons. But, and I got a great relationship with my attorney. But it's not his job to lay awake at night worrying about my assets and coming up with techniques to protect my assets. That's my job. And it's your job to do it for your family. And I hope you decide to take that obligation on. Here's something a little bit interesting. We won't spend a lot of time on it, but it's my history. This is the first house I bought in 1969. I paid $9,300 for this house, and I assumed a VA loan. And the cash to balance was, I think, around $800, I think, to get him to for me to assume his loan balance and cash him out. And where did I get that money? Well, I got it from saving money by cashing in pop bottles. And some of you may be old enough, and maybe they still do this. I'm not quite sure if they still give a deposit on pop bottles, but when I was growing up, they gave a nickel on a small bottle and a dime on a large bottle. And before I was 16, where I could legally get a job, the only way I could make money was to collect pop bottles along the roadway and in town. And I saved every dime I could because um, I didn't have a job, a regular job to make money. And my parents certainly didn't have any money to give to me. Um, and I did go to college. Thank goodness for my mother, making sure that I did that. And my parents did get divorced, went bankrupt. My father was an alcoholic. He was a really good alcoholic too. He excelled at that. Um, and so my point in telling this story, I'm sure many of you on this webinar today can relate to this story, but when you start out life with nothing and you work really, really hard to accumulate some assets and get something in your life, the last thing you want to do is go back to nothing. And you could be sued back down to nothing pretty easily in this business. Um, yeah, I personally, I think whoever said that money doesn't buy happiness probably didn't have any money because I think 98% of your problems in life can be solved by money. But that's just the history on old Mr. Land Trust. Uh, so I was speaking in California one time, and this was 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, to a group. I speak a lot to real estate investment clubs. I spoke 33 times last year alone, and I've been speaking for almost 25 years. So that's a few thousand people I've spoken to about this subject. So it's kind of an avocation of mine. I really believe in this in my heart that every real estate investor should not own real estate in their name. But when I was done with this talk, this gentleman came up and started talking to me, and I said, well, "Wait a minute, we got to get a recorder going here because this is powerful stuff." So listen to this. It's a very short testimonial.
Andy, I have to tell you, as an attorney here in California, I pride myself on the ability to basically break apart anything legally. And what you've presented is beyond my ability to pierce. The asset protection and the methodology, especially the specific order of going out of state using some of your high-end methods is just mind-blowing to me. It's something that I can't find a way to pierce it, and I've tried.
Well, thank you. I appreciate those comments. That's nice to have the affirmation like that from time to time. That most because you're not always believed. You know, when you teach this stuff, some people think, well, maybe that's all theory, but it doesn't really work. So when you hear it from somebody that's in the streets, going after people from time to time, it's nice to know that we've put up a barrier you can't get through. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You absolutely have. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that was very nice of him to step up there and give that testimonial. I will say this before we go on. He mentioned in that testimonial my high-end methods. Here's what he was referring to. There's no federal land trust law. It's all state by state. And actually, only 6 states have a statute, a land trust statute, but they're legal in all states. So what that means is, giving you a personal example, I live in Illinois. All my investment property is in Illinois. but I don't use Illinois land trusts. And that's what I want to teach you. No matter what state you're in, you might want to form a trust in another state to hold title to your real estate investments. That's a great asset protection technique that we can get into detail with my home study course. So I want to break this down for you, so make it as simple as possible into 4 steps. Step 1 is we got to create the trust agreement. So, for example, they had to build your house before you brought the furniture in, right? So the house is the trust agreement, and the furniture would be represented by the real estate. You bring it in after you build the house. So we do have to create that trust agreement first. Then we deed the property into the trust. Now you can deed, if you're in title now, you can deed out of your name into the trust. Or like I said, the best way to do this is if you're buying real estate, take title directly from the seller into your trust, so you're never on the chain of title. That's important. And then you record the deed in trust. And step 4 is my favorite step. You get to sleep better at night. I don't know if you remember the very first piece of real estate you bought. Maybe you signed a note, 100,000, maybe 400,000 for you people in California, but a large note, a large debt that you weren't accustomed to being responsible for. You kind of lose sleep over that, you know? And this is the opposite feeling. You really do feel kind of a relief off your shoulders of liability and exposure when you get off the title. So breaking it down a little bit further, that's step 1. We start with a good trust agreement, and that's what I'll provide for you. You follow my instructions. I have bold printed instructions throughout the trust agreement. The trustee signs it, the beneficiary signs it, and you keep for your records only. You do not record the trust agreement. Step 2, now we got the trust form. Now we're going to put the property into the trust. So we start with a deed and trust, and I'll give you some samples to use. Again, doing it the right way, you take title directly from the seller so the seller will be the grantor on the deed, and your trustee is receiving title. They're the grantee on the deed. Don't put your home address on the deed. Use a P.O. box, okay? And then transferring the property into the trust, we record that deed in the county in which the property is located, not where you live, or maybe not in some other state where you form the trust, in the county where the property is located. And they'll either, if you take it in, they'll stamp it and give it to you right then, or if you mail it in, they'll stamp it and mail it back to you. But basically, you keep that for your records as proof of the property that's in your trust. And then we get to go to step 4. We've earned the right to sleep better at night, knowing our assets are more secure. Okay, now I'm going to stop right here. Andrew is my marketing director, and he's on this webinar with us. Andrew, do we have any questions that we could address right now? Maybe 2 or 3?
We do, and some of them are very essential to understanding the land trust concept. And one of them is, what if I already own the property in my name? Won't people be able to identify that I was the previous owner?
Well, yes, they will know that you were the previous owner, but not the current owner. And there's nothing you can do about it. If you're on the title, all you can do is get off the title. And there are lots of benefits, estate planning, privacy, asset protection benefits to getting off the title. But nobody knows that the title went from you to a trust. They don't know who owns the trust. There's no registry on planet Earth for a trust. You can't look up who owns a trust. So if I'm buying property, I'm taking title from you directly to my trust. So nobody knows, are you the beneficiary of the trust that it got transferred to, or am I somebody totally unrelated? So that's the way to do that. And then, like I said, in the future, you can stop this problem that you're worried about by just taking title directly from the seller into your trust at closing.
And when you get right down to it, changing from your name to a trust isn't any different from selling the property to a third party. Just
Correct.
because you owned it at one point doesn't mean you're responsible for it now.
Thank you.
Another question that follows right on the heels of that is who actually owns the property
The
once it goes
trustee,
into a trust?
the trustee and the trust, they hold full legal and equitable title to that real estate.
But that's all they hold, right?
That's all they hold is the title. We don't want them to have any other rights or benefits. They can only act with our written direction to do something. Other than that, they just, you send them off on a corner and tell them to stand there for 20 years until you need them to do something, like you're going to sell the property out of the trust, or you want to put a loan on the property in the trust. You would need the trustee to sign the mortgage as collateral for your loan.
You had paused to only ask a few questions, so I'll ask one more, and if you want to go after for another one after that, that's up to you. Uh, can you elaborate? We have a question. Can a land trust be formed in New Jersey? You touched on this already, but can you elaborate more?
Yes, it certainly can be. In fact, I've got a lot of students in New Jersey. I was just out there last month or the month before, um, and I've been to New Jersey many times speaking to real estate clubs in that whole area, Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Um, but again, you may want to. New Jersey doesn't have a land trust statute per se. And again, you may want to consider forming your trust using another state's trust laws, one of those 6 states that I mentioned earlier that have an actual statute. I'd like to form my trusts in states that have an actual statute. I think it gives them a little more validity. And certainly in a state that's got the best trust law, and I could give you good recommendations in that regard as well.
But at the basis of that question is, can a land trust be formed in X area?
Yes, is the short answer. Yes, they're legal in all states. They can be a little problematic in some states that aren't familiar with land trusts, but there's no state that says you can't use a land trust here.
And that's part of the reason why you answer your own phone, right? When your students run into a problem or two.
Yeah, they're going to have questions, and just pick up the phone and call me. I'm like I said, it's an avocation, but I spend a lot of time talking to people. I love talking to real estate investors, especially if I feel like I can contribute to their success in life.
There are a lot of questions, Mr. Land Trust. I don't know where you want to continue. You may want to
Well,
pick up more a little later.
yeah, a little later. Let me hit this land trust funnel because most people really enjoy this part of the presentation. This is an example. Let's say you got 3 apartment buildings. You put each one in a separate trust. You could have one LLC as the beneficiary of all 3 trusts. And then if you wanted to do a little more estate planning, you could make the successor member of your LLC your living trust. Now, let's break that down. First off, a living trust, in my opinion, is pretty much worthless when you're alive, but they are terrific when you die because they become immediately irrevocable. So many people that have a living trust will dump all kinds of assets in their personal and real estate. And just because you put your property into a land trust doesn't mean there's no more liability. The liability flows through to the beneficiary, and that's why you need an LLC at the beneficiary level. You would never want to make your living trust the direct beneficiary of your land trust, because if something happens and they come after the beneficiary, it could affect all the other assets in your living trust. So that's point number one. It's important for you to understand, because most attorneys don't even understand this. There's a big difference between a land trust and a living trust. A living trust is trustee driven. The trustee makes all the decisions on what happens inside that trust. A Land trust is just the opposite. It's beneficiary driven. The beneficiary makes all the decisions, and the trustee just goes along for the ride and does what she's told to do. So big difference. They're totally opposite, but we can link all this together for a pretty good estate plan. I mean, uh, something you can do yourself. Your living trust, you really should have an attorney do that for you, but you can do most of this other stuff and save a ton of money, and at least have an estate plan. Now, if you get up into maybe 5 million or more net worth, maybe you should go out and spend 40 or $50,000 on a fancy dancy estate plan. But most of us can't afford that. And as opposed to doing nothing and being exposed to losing it all through some frivolous lawsuit, you can do this on your own with my help. So take to heart this land trust funnel. It works really well. I was married for 41 years and my wife died almost 10 years ago. And this is exactly how her assets were held. She had her land trust, she had her LLC, and she had her own living trust. And the moment she died, everything dropped down into that living trust. There was no estate. There was no transfer of anything because it was
Probate.
all set up. Thank you. No probate from a legal standpoint. And probate, if you don't know about it, is a legal process that if you own real estate right now in your name and you die today, that real estate is going to have to go through probate, which is a legal process that's going to cost money and delay your heirs receiving the assets. That doesn't happen when you put your property in these trusts. The moment you die, your heirs get immediate control. And I can tell you from personal experience, this is invaluable. I mean, if you really love the loved ones you say you love, that you want to leave some assets to, do it right. Don't give them a mess to unsort out. Just make it smooth. And when my wife died, nobody saw anything happen. We didn't record anything. I had immediate control of her assets through her living trust because I am and was the trustee of her living trust. She was the trustee of my living trust. So it works really well for a basic estate planning funnel. So let's end up with 12 reasons to use a land trust. First off, it avoids property going through probate. We just talked about that. Judgments don't attach to the property. That's a big one. In 1985, I bought a shopping center with a friend of mine, and I put the title to that shopping center in a land trust. And in the year 2000, he moved out of Illinois and he moved down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and was very successful. Made millions of dollars until when? Has anybody got a guess? Can you put it in the chat box? When did the millions of dollars stop? Do we have any guesses, Andrew?
Uh, a good guess when he got sued. That is a very good sued COVID-19. I think there we go. Miss Paul, thank you very much for that one. Great recession. We've got more of that coming in.
That is right. 2008. Thank you, Paul. And then he was sued. Thank you for the other comment. But he was sued because of the crash of the real estate market. And when I last talked to him, he had $23 million of liens and judgments against him personally. But I was only concerned about one. A bank in Florida came all the way back up to Illinois. Now, he hasn't lived in Illinois for 15 years at this point. They come all the way back to Illinois, to my county, where the shopping center is, and they record a $3.2 million judgment against his name personally. And when I saw that on my computer, that listing come up of that lien and judgment against him, I thought, I held my heart and I said, thank you, God, for trust. Because if he and I had been on the title together, that $3.2 million judgment would have wiped out that shopping center. I would have lost everything that I'd worked 35 years for because of something I didn't even do. I was not involved with him in any way, shape, or form when he went to Florida. Don't ever go on a deed with somebody, folks. It is the kiss of death. And I don't even think you should go on a deed with yourself, but certainly not with somebody else, because it can wipe you out. And there's a prime example of how that would work. Point number three, it's easier and safer for management of when you got multiple owners. So let's say we had 10 real estate investors. They want to put 10 grand a piece in to the pot and go out and buy a piece of real estate. Well, can you imagine 10 people on the deed? That'd be a nightmare. So what you do is you put the title in a land trust, and you could have 10 different beneficiaries to the land trust. And that protects the title for everybody's benefit. Reason four, wholesaling and contract assignments are easier and more private. No registered agent, no franchise fees for these trusts, no tax return, no tax ID number. It's a pass through in the eyes of the IRS. They don't even call it an entity. They just call it a contractual arrangement. Protection against unhappy tenants. I suspect that many of the people on this presentation today are property managers, whether you're managing your property and or other people's property. But by using a trust and not being the owner, it totally changes your dynamics and relationship with your tenants. Because you know, if you, let's say you go to give an increase in rent, and rents have been going up a lot lately, right? So let's say you go to your tenant and you say, here's your 20% increase in the rent next year, and they know that you're the owner, probably an argument's going to start, right? But if you don't own it and it's in a trust and you're just the property manager, then you have a separation there that allows you to deal better with your tenants. I have a lot of tenants. I probably almost once a day will end a phone conversation with a tenant by saying, I'll talk to the owner and get back to you. That gives me time to think. It gives me time to blame somebody else. If they say, 20% increase, I say, yeah, well, I'm sorry, but the owner told me to do it. I'm just a property manager. I'm just doing my job. It totally changes it. Let me give you some other hard examples. I speak once a year in Cancun to a group of real estate investors called the Mastermind Group. They're all out of Texas. And I was down there one year. We were sitting out around the pool talking about real estate, and this married couple sitting across the table from me said, "Oh, Randy, thanks a lot for writing and creating the Land Trust Made Simple course. We bought it and we use it." And I said, "Well, thanks for buying it, but why did you buy it?" He said, "Well, funny story." He said, "We live in Dallas, Texas. We've got 15 single-family rental houses. They were all in our names personally. When one Friday night, about 9:30, there was a knock at our door. And I answered the door, and it was one of our tenants. And he said, "Hey, man, my toilet's plugged up. I need you to come over right now and unplug it." And my friend across the table in Cancun said, "Hey, it's 9:30 on Friday night. I'm not coming out tonight. I'll be there first thing in the morning, though." And the tenant looked him in the eye and he said, "You don't understand. You're coming out tonight." And a big, big scene was created. They had to call the police and have him removed from their home. And all he had done is typed in his own address, found out who the owner was, typed in his name, found out where he lived, and marched on over and demanded action. It was at that point the light bulb went off in their heads. It's not a good idea to own this stuff in my name. So they bought my course. They created 15 land trusts. They titled every property into a separate trust. And he was reporting to me a couple of years later that they've not had any problems since. I had a lady out of Florida who called me once, and she said, "How do I get your land trust course fast?" And I said, "Well, what's the hurry?" She said, I own 8 rental properties here in Florida and my own personal residence. I just got a call from one of my tenants who said a man knocked on the door looking for me. And I think I know who he is, and I'm not interested." So the light bulb went off in her head that You don't own this stuff in your name. And ladies, listen closely. This is modern day stalking. If you own real estate in your name and you're at the grocery store and somebody looks over your shoulder and sees your phone number or your name, they can look you up and find out where you live. So maybe that's not such a good idea to own real estate in your name. There's just no reasons to own real estate in your name. You get all the same benefits not owning it in your name and using a trust. So, point 8, you avoid the due on sale clause. Now, this is if you're selling real estate using a trust. You avoid the due on sale clause, transfer tax, tax reassessment at sale, and closing costs. Those are huge costs to our business. And privacy of ownership by not being on the title helps you avoid ID theft and keeps debt off of your credit report. Wouldn't it be nice to own a few $1,000,000 worth of real estate and someone runs a credit report on you and it doesn't show up? Use a trust. Okay, point 10, repossess, don't foreclose real estate on an installment contract. I found that there are a whole bunch of really good American people that have money to buy a house. They want to buy a house, but they'll never qualify for a conventional loan. Why not? Let's name it. Credit score is too low. Debt to income, the ratios are off. Self-employed less than 2 years, don't qualify. No social security number. There are a lot of good Americans out there that will never qualify for a loan to buy a house ever. They'll never qualify. But they're good people and they have money. So I like to sell to those folks for a profit, of course. I deserve a profit. And sell to them on an installment contract, not a contract for deed. I'm selling the beneficial interest in the trust. Remember, we said early on that's a personal property interest. I'm selling a personal property interest on an installment contract. And what that allows me to do is if you default, I can repossess, not foreclose. Now, point number 10 here was worth you attending this presentation today. If you don't take anything else away, that's a goodie. And that will make you big money. Same kind of concept if you're doing lease options. Don't do an option on the property. Give an option on the trust, on the beneficial interest in the trust. And I can teach you how to do that. And lastly, naming your land trust helps you avoid lawsuits just in naming it. I have a whole chapter in my course guide on how to name and number your trust. And it's kind of the fun part of doing this. You can name it anything you want as long as you don't infringe on copyright law. And I give you many examples in the course guide on of intimidating names that you can give your trust that maybe somebody doesn't really want to sue a trust that may have some bigger horsepower than they do. So that's a fun and unique part of the course itself. So what's at stake here, folks? Well, pretty much all your future goals, you know, college education, a new house, new car, savings for retirement. That's all what we're doing this real estate investing for, isn't it? So about 15 years ago, I formed something called the Land Trust University, which is an online learning portal. And if you become my student today, I will give you 6 months free membership in the Land Trust University, where you can watch me on video teaching this material to a live audience. You can listen to me in your car or on your device in your car. If I invent a new form or update forms, it goes into the university and you get that. There's just a lot of really good information in the university. And I do a newsletter. I'm the only guy on the planet that does a land trust newsletter. And I do a monthly training session. So subjects like this Corporate Transparency Act, we've been spending some time on that this last few months in our training sessions. So I encourage you to become a member. This gives you an example of the online training video and audio that comes with my course. And as you can see, I really want to drill down on that service thing. I think service is kind of hard to get in America today. So anytime you can get good service, I think it's invaluable. Um, I would encourage you to stay on through. We're almost done with the presentation, but I am going to offer you a savings of $222 if you are interested in getting this course. So stay on until the next few minutes and make sure you get the full benefit here. So what's included? All these documents are in Word format, so you can change them to your liking. All the important documents you're ever going to need the rest of your life. You're not going to have to buy anything else the rest of your life to create these trusts and manage them over your lifetime. You fill in the blank and hit print, and literally it takes you 5 minutes to create a trust. I do also offer a free consultation with an associate of mine who sets up LLCs and corporations for my students all over the country. You can talk to him for free. Excuse me. And he'll tell you what's the best state to form your LLC in. Should it be a multi-member or single member? What are the costs? Because each state has different costs. So you'll get that as a free bonus. This is the last testimonial, I promise. It's only like 45 seconds long, so please listen to it. If you're still not sure you can do it, listen to TJ, please.
Hi, my name's TJ. I'm from Illinois. I'm 21 years old and I'm a senior in college. I recently acquired a piece of land down in Florida, and I knew a little bit about land trusts, but not much. After finding some research and doing some online, I came across Randy's website. I wasn't too sure about it all at first, but I did call him because he had his number on the webpage, and I eventually bought the Land Trust Made Simple home study course. The course was great, and I was actually able to make my own land trust 100% by myself. No attorneys involved, no realtors involved, and that's me with very little real estate experience. If I can do it, anyone can do it, and I want to reassure you that it is well worth the money.
Thank you, TJ. That was very nice. So the bottom line is you work hard to acquire your assets, invest a little bit of time and a little bit of money learning how to protect those assets. Doesn't that make sense? You can't wait till the wolf is at the door to start your asset protection. I wish we could. I wish I could, but you can't. You have to be proactive and do it before you need it. Now, I do have a 100% ironclad money back guarantee. If you order my course and get it, and for whatever reason it's not for you, if you return it in 14 days, then I'll give you a 100% return of your money. Fair enough. Now, so you got two options. You can buy my course and learn how to protect your family's assets and make more money on each deal with my help, or you can ignore my advice and hope nothing happens to your hard-earned assets and money. So hopefully you will read the note at the bottom that says that's not a very smart option. You need to get going now. So today's special price is listed here with all the assets that you get in the course, including a 6-month membership in the trial membership in the Land Trust University. That's $597, and you can deduct this off your taxes, so you can reduce that by your the rate that you pay on taxes. Now, I do have a combo deal, my basic course and my advanced course. Now, you may or may not be interested in the advanced course, but I'll mention it to you. The advanced course teaches you more asset protection techniques using the trust, combining the trust, the land trust with LLCs, corporations, and other trusts. And most importantly, it's geared towards teaching you how to create a personal property trust. So the advanced course teaches you how to create a personal property trust. So if you want to put your car, your boat, your motorcycle, your shotgun, your snowmobile in a trust, it doesn't go in a land trust, it goes in a personal property trust. Now, both of those courses are $597 a piece, but when I speak like this, I offer a combo deal where you can save $297 and get both courses for only $897. And then the last thing I have to offer you is my elite package, which is both my land trust courses, my option course, and my privacy and asset protection course. 4 courses, normally $1,550 on my website. You can get them today. Hard copy for $1,097. Once you follow the QR code, you'll find that you can buy, in all 3 cases, you can either buy a hard copy, or for $100 less, you can get a download only. I will mention this. Go ahead and get your phone out and snap the QR code that's appropriate for you. The best deal is the elite package. You get all 4 courses. But if you only are interested in just setting up a basic land trust, then just get the basic QR code. You will be prompted to put in a username and password. So you can set that up. And if you want to change it later, that's fine. But my point is, you will get immediate access to the Land Trust University. So even if you order a hard copy, and we'll ship that out to you today, you'll have immediate access to the download version in the Land Trust University in the next 5 minutes, for example. If you make your purchase, you'll have immediate access to the Land Trust University with all the forms and the course guide and everything. So you can be studying the material while you're waiting for the hard copies to come in the mail. I think we should answer some more questions, Andrew. Can you throw some more out at me, please?
Yes, I can. And before I do, I want to point out to everyone that some of the concepts that you have presented in this, for example, selling on the beneficial interest, in the Land Trust University, you have a checklist for how to do that. You have the forms that you would want to offer. You have that you would want to complete to create the contract. You have the letters and other documents should things go south and you need to
Terminate the
remind
contract.
somebody to make their payment and so forth. So there's a lot to the Land Trust University, and in the bigger picture, there's a lot to these courses that you're ordering and considering today. So we have, it's no surprise with AAOA being the host that their members and their people watching today should be so intelligent and ask such great questions. All of my properties are deeded in my revocable trust. Can I do one thing and make the trust under that trust?
Yes, you can deed out of that revocable trust that you have now. And let's say you got 5 properties in that revocable trust. You can deed out to 5 different land trusts, and get them all separated out, and then I would suggest you make an LLC the beneficiary of those 5 land trusts before everything feeds down to your revocable trust, which is probably a living trust, is what it sounds like. But yeah, you just deed out. Five deeds is what you need, and 5 trust agreements that obviously I would help you create.
How to make sure when transferring to land trust that it doesn't trigger a reappraisal causing supplemental property tax by the county?
Well, because first off, there are 3,300 county recorders offices in America, and they all do things a little differently. But my experience is, in all these counties that I've spoken in over the years, is that they typically have either a form with a box to check or verbiage to put on your deed that in essence says this is an exempt transaction. Sometimes, in fact, I was talking to a student of mine yesterday, and we were on this subject, and I said, just take in your trust agreement to the recorder's office with the deed and show them that you or your entity is the beneficiary of the trust, so they don't think that you're selling it to a trust that's not you. So if you were selling it to a trust that's not you, then they would be justified in charging a transfer tax and reassessing. But if you're just transferring it, You have every right to do that under a federal law that was passed in 1982 called the Garn-St. Germain Act. And that act says that every American has the right to put their property into a trust without triggering the due on sale clause or other negative consequences. So just check with your county recorder's office. My experience is 99% of them are very nice and cooperative and will let you make that transfer without reassessment and without a transfer tax.
We've got some more good ones here. One is, and I think Paul is asking how you're maintaining privacy when his question is, how is the insurance or taxes paid? Cash? And I think that at the basis of that is, how is your privacy maintained when you're supporting the property?
Well, great question. Number one, that's why I said earlier in this presentation, don't put your home address on the deed because that's where they're going to mail the tax bill, and that's where the public will know where you live and can look up and figure out 2 and 2 makes 4. So you always want to use a PO box on everything, deeds and everything else in your life, in my opinion. But that's one way of maintaining it. Uh, from a tax standpoint, there are a couple of ways of doing that and paying your real estate taxes. You can buy a cashier's check and take it down to the recorder's office. I'm sorry, the taxing office and pay your taxes. You could take cash in. I know some people that are ultra paranoid that will just take cash in, and then certainly you can do that. So a cashier's check or cash, or like a property management account. That's what I do. I use a property management account that's not tied back to me. So there are 3 options for you.
And permit me to point out to our audience that associating the land trust with the property management account is in the Land Trust University. That's some more material that comes with your purchase. Vicki, good for you for asking this question. It's the right question to ask. What are the disadvantages of a land trust?
Vicki, in my opinion, after using these trusts for over 40 years, the disadvantage is it is a little extra paperwork. You do have to form the trust agreement and you do have to find a trustee. Now, I've got a letter in the Land Trust University that I've written that you can print out and hand to somebody to convince them to be your trustee. But certainly close family members, somebody with a different last name than you, somebody who has a financial interest in your well-being are great candidates for trustee. And I actually have a whole chapter in the course guide on who can be and who should be your trustee. So I give you a lot of good ideas there. But so that's a little extra hassle finding a trustee and the paperwork. But you know, the way I look at that, Vicki, is I mean, what's your net worth? Is it worth a little extra paperwork? I mean, you know, if you're working hard to build these assets, my gosh, you don't want to lose them because of an extra 10 pages of paper. So that's my personal opinion, like it or not.
Well, I wonder if Vicki and Teresa were teaming up because the next question is, what prevents the trustee from being sued? And that follows on your statement about finding a trustee. And
Right.
and that's one of the things that trustees would be concerned about.
It is. However, if a lawsuit occurs against the trust, yes, they would start at the trustee level, but the trustee is not personally liable. They have no personal liability for being the trustee. The reason why a lawsuit would hit the trustee first is just to get them into court or to get them to say who the beneficiary is. And because the beneficiary is where the liability lies. Remember, I said just because you put your property in the land trust doesn't mean there's no more liability. It flows through to the beneficiary. That's why you need that LLC at the beneficiary level. So basically, your trustee would ultimately have to tell them who the beneficiary is. Then they would drop the case against the trustee because the trustee has no personal liability, and they would address the beneficiary LLC.
Alexandra, there's a question from Eric about recording of this, and you may see some questions in the chat box or in the Q&A that you think get priority. So I'll hand it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. We will be providing the recording tomorrow. We'll also be providing the links to all the courses in case you didn't grab a shot of the QR code. So look out for that tomorrow. I think there were, gosh, there's so many good questions, you guys. You're putting in a ton of really great ones. But I think one that I've seen a lot is 1031s and how that might affect the land trust. So I'm wondering if there is any sort of impact if you do a 1031 or if it's any different in that kind of transaction.
Yeah. The IRS says that the 1031 is okay using a trust. In fact, I give you the IRS ruling in the course guide. But the short answer is you can exchange from trustee to trustee or beneficiary to beneficiary, but you can do a 1031 exchange using a land trust.
Wonderful. Another question that came up is from Caleb is, does this structure work with financing?
Yes, Caleb. We're not talking about just all free and clear property here. And here's the deal. If you're getting financing, it's conventional financing, meaning that the bank is going to sell the loan off to the feds, a 30-year fixed rate loan, for example. They will not let you close directly into a trust. You have to close in your name and then transfer to your trust. But you can only get 4 or 5 of those and you're done. There's a short limit on the number of loans you can get, conventional loans. And if you're a very active real estate investor, you're going to have a lot more than 4 or 5 loans. So at that point, you have to go to what I call a regional bank that will not sell the loan to the feds. They'll keep the loan in-house, and they will let you close, taking title directly from the seller into your trust. You'll sign a note and or a personal guarantee. Your trustee will sign the mortgage, which is collateral for your loan, but the trustee has no personal liability on that. They're just saying, here's your collateral, but don't look to me for any sort of personal guarantee. The personal guarantee comes from you. So yeah, it just depends on if you're getting a conventional loan or a non-conventional loan is the answer to that question.
Hmm. Thank you for clarifying. Giovanni also asked, what happens when the land trust trustee dies?
Oh, great question, Giovanni. Great question.
Thank you for asking that, Alexandra, because I saw that one too, and this is one of our favorite ones. It's very fun.
Yeah.
It's not
Here's my
fun that
personal.
anybody dies.
No.
I want to be
To
clear about that.
clarify.
I want to be very clear.
My personal experience, I've got a lot. I've had 9 trustees die over the last 40 to 50 years of using these trusts. And when the very first one died, I kind of panicked. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my property. The title's in a dead man's name. What do I do? So I sat back and thought about it for about a year. And then I finally realized that I woke up in the middle of the night and I said to myself, why do I need a live trustee anyway? And so it occurred to me, I need a live trustee if I'm selling the property out of the trust, or if I'm putting financing on the property in the trust, I need a live trustee to sign the mortgage, like I just mentioned earlier. But if I'm not doing one of those 2 things, I don't need a live trustee. And I left the title of that property in a dead man's name for 15 years before I decided to sell the property. And 3 days before closing of the deal, I went to my friends down at Chicago Title and I said, my trustee died. Here's the appointment of new trustee. And we closed the deal and they straightened the title out for me. So I learned a very valuable lesson that I've used over the years. And that's, if you think about that, it's kind of a technique because not all, but in some lawsuits against these trusts, you have to start by serving the trustee.
Interesting.
Anybody thinking deeply about that? How do you serve these trustees if they're 6 feet under, right? Uh-huh.
Vicky asking, how does title holding trust work with a family trust?
Well, Vicky, I think you're talking the family trust is a standard um, living trust. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, I showed you the land trust funnel. At the bottom of that funnel was a family trust. You can call it what you want to, living trust, family trust, but it's a irrevocable trust while you're alive. It becomes immediately it's irrevocable trust while you're alive. It becomes irrevocable upon your death. And an irrevocable trust is really strong. But as I mentioned, you don't want to put a bunch of assets in any one trust. You don't want to put it in one land trust, one LLC, or one corporation. You want to divide all your assets out. And that's what I'm teaching you how to do. So you can connect that family trust with your living trust. I mean, with your land trust and your LLC, as I diagrammed out in that land trust funnel. And at the bottom, it's kind of a catch-all, is your family living trust. And your family living trust is designed to distribute your assets upon your death. You know, you want the coin collection to go to Uncle Joe, and your pickup truck to go to Uncle Bill, and that sort of thing is in your family trust. The land trust doesn't talk about that. It just it holds real estate assets and protects real estate assets and gives you a lot of other benefits. So I hope I've answered your question, because we did address that earlier with the land trust funnel.
Yes, thanks. Another good question here. I've been told my landlord insurance for perils and liability needs to insure the owner of the property. So each insurance policy should be changed to the land trust as owner with me as the additional insured.
Yes, because they own the property and the insurance company wants to insure the owner. Now, I have a whole chapter in the course guide on insuring the property, so please review that. But the short answer is you want the named insured on the policy to be the trustee and the trust, and all beneficiaries as their interest may appear. That's kind of a catch-all phrase invented by the insurance companies, by the way. So you don't really have to list yourself personally, but still have coverage. And that's all explained in that insurance chapter in the course.
Wonderful. Nina just asked, do we need to prepare everything at once? The land trust, LLC, and family trust? I'm
No.
assuming I can't do the land trust without the others.
You could do the others, but if you own real estate right now, you need to start with getting off the title and getting into the land trust.
Yeah.
Now you could make yourself the beneficiary initially, and then get your LLC form, because I'm going to give you a special consultation with an asset protection specialist. You can work out the setting up the LLC. And, 2 or 3 months from now, you can transfer your interest to the LLC. And then a few months later, you could create the family trust with an attorney and link that family trust to the LLC as the successor member to your LLC.
Great. Nina
And
also asked if you recommend a non-revocable living trust.
well, a non-revocable means irrevocable, and a living trust typically starts out as revocable when you're alive and becomes irrevocable the moment you die. That's how they're set up. But again, irrevocable is better than revocable, because an irrevocable, think about a revocable trust is like a curtain. Nobody knows who's behind the curtain, but I can come up and punch that curtain and hurt somebody behind it, even though I don't know who it is. Whereas an irrevocable trust is like a wall. I don't know who's behind the wall, and if I punch the wall, I'm going to hurt myself. I'm not going to hurt the beneficiary. So think of it that way. Maybe that would help.
Yes, that's a great analogy, actually. Donna asked also, I think I'm more interested in selling using land trust and installment contract. Is there a way to just get that?
No, it's all part of the package, Donna. I don't break it down into pieces. it would be too complicated for me to deal with.
I mean, you're getting
It's just
so
one.
much, it's worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, in the course that I think, with all the other value add, you may need it in the future anyway. Someone else asked about your package and was wondering what the difference is with the elite package. That Juwen Shen was asking that question earlier.
Okay. First, let me ask you: are the QR codes still up on the screen?
They are, yes.
Okay. Okay. Good. Well,
Mhm.
the elite package is all four of my courses. I only have four courses. It includes the basic and advanced land trust courses, an option course, which is really cool. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard about buying options on real estate, but you could buy an option on a single family house, um, and and, and gather and capture future appreciation on a property you don't even own or have tenants or toilets or management or liability. So the option course is really fascinating. You can do pure options or options, lease with the option to buy or lease with the option to sell. So I think you'd really enjoy that. And there's hardly anybody doing options, so you have very little competition. And the fourth course in the elite package, sir, is my privacy and asset protection course. It really doesn't have anything to do with trust. It's just techniques I developed over the last 53 years in this business to protect my assets. I think you'll find that interesting. And I give, after every chapter, there's a little test, a little 3-question test for you. So I tried to make it fun and interesting. So that's the best deal. If you buy them all on my website right now, it's $1,550. You can get an elite hard copy of $1,097 or just all download for $997.
And
Great.
permit me,
Mhm.
permit me please to point out that the lease options course and the privacy and asset protection course are downloads only. You can get the hard copies of the Land Trust Made Simple courses, the basic and advanced, but in any option, those are download only.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that, Andrew.
Wonderful. I know we have plenty of other questions still left. Andrew and Randy, I'll leave it up to you if you want to answer any additional questions or if you would
Yeah,
like to. Okay,
no, I
sure.
love this. I'll be
Well,
here all
then
day.
let's keep going then.
Okay.
And he's
Uh,
not just saying that, he means it.
All right. So, someone else was asking here about the offer as well, if these will be available for just a limited time, or if this is something ongoing available to AAOA members, including that, 6-month offer I think that you put for the Landlord University. Is there an expiration date on that?
Well, I mean, you're going to send out a follow-up, I think, in the
I
next
will, yes, with
day
the
or two.
links. Hmm.
Yeah, and that will have the same offer in it. So you got a
Okay.
day or two to think about it if that's what you want to do.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, and then Charita has asked a few times. I've seen your question. Corporate Transparency Act. Who does the reporting under the Corporate Transparency Act? Me, the LLC, or both, or in this case, I guess the land trusts. Where would that fall with the Corporate Transparency Act?
Well, the basic trust itself does not report. Now, if you have an LLC as a beneficiary, it's going to have to report. Um, and there are some situations with like banks. If you're doing a transaction with a bank and somebody comes in and buys a property and pays all cash and you've got your property in a land trust and they pay all cash, then the bank would have to report that. So it gets a little complicated, but the short answer is the land trust is the least affected entity of all entities when it comes to this Corporate Transparency Act.
Right. Elizabeth asked earlier, can an S corporation that owns 1031 DSTs, Delaware Statutory Trust, be put into a land trust?
Can those trusts be put into land trusts?
Yes, the Delaware Statutory
Yeah,
Trust. So they have the S
yeah.
corporation that owns those pieces.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Those
Mhm.
statutory trusts are pretty cool. I've got one I've had one for probably 25 years
Nice.
out of Nevada. But I think we've kind of reversed the terminology here. Let me clarify. That statutory trust would be the beneficiary of the land trust. So the land trust would hold title, but the owner of the trust, the beneficiary of the trust, would be your statutory trust. And a statutory trust is a personal property trust. And since the beneficial interest in a land trust is personal property, if you're going to own it in another trust, it would be a personal property trust. And that's what a statutory trust is. I hope that's not too confusing. But basically, yes, you can use a land trust, put each property into a separate land trust, and they could funnel down to one or more statutory trusts.
Okay. Yes, well explained. The terms make that a little confusing, but I think I got it. You guys can play it back tomorrow when I send you the recording.
And in
Jessica,
slow-mo.
yeah.
May I get to one, Alexandra?
Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Uh, can one document remove the property from the land trust so I can sell or make it free and clear, or I'm going to add to this question, or refinance? Then can I put it back into the trust after the transaction? I had this happen when I refinanced the property in my revocable trust. One page out, sign docs, one page to re-enter.
Yes, it's just a deed out into your name personally. You close the deal, the deed back into the trust. So two deeds will do it.
And the forms to do it are
Included.
In the course.
yes,
Amazing.
exactly. That's part of the
Yeah,
Land Trust University.
we've been
Very
thinking through this.
convenient. Yes. Uh, Another one that I saw was interesting. I don't know, Joel asked, does putting your building in a land trust reduce the property tax write-off on your personal income taxes? And I would add to that if there's any tax benefit to land trusts.
No, it doesn't change your tax status at all. And no, there's really very little benefit um, tax wise. And the only example I could give you on that is uh, Florida doesn't have a state income tax. Illinois has a 5% tax. So if you lived in Florida and you own rental property in Illinois in a trust, in a land trust, the money flows through to the beneficiary who lives in Florida, who doesn't pay 5% state tax. So you can save a little bit on state tax, but basically, I don't really uh, encourage the use of these kind of trusts to save taxes because they're in the big tax savings. It's more privacy, asset protection, and estate planning purposes.
Amazing. Yeah, and that's so valuable. Vicky,
Mr.
uh-huh.
Mr. Land Trust, this seems like a good point to point out, a good place to point out that it's also about saving fees. So if you're
Hmm.
doing business if you're using a land trust to do business in a different state, can you expand on that?
Well, yeah, from a estate planning standpoint, especially, I know a lot of real estate investors will invest in different states. So, for example, my mentor, who died years ago, but he was a big real estate investor. He lived in Florida. He owned property in 22 states. Well, if he died owning property in his name in 22 states and didn't use the trust, he would have to be probated. His estate would have to probate in 22 different states. Oh, what a nightmare and what an expense. So I'm not sure, was that what you were alluding to or something different, Andrew?
I was alluding to having to have an LLC in every state, or having an LLC renew in states where the annual renewal fee is expensive.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the best example of this is, let's talk to you real estate investors out in California. Many of you are going to Nevada, Wyoming, Delaware, and forming your LLCs because they have better asset protection benefits. And I agree, those are great states. The problem is, if you bring those entities back into California and buy real estate in the name of that Wyoming LLC, now you're not only going to pay Wyoming franchise taxes, you're going to pay the $800 franchise tax in California. Because when you do that, that entity is doing business in California and therefore has to register and pay the 800. If you use a land trust, don't have to do that, because if you make the land trust the owner of the California property, the Wyoming LLC the beneficiary of that land trust, now the Wyoming LLC is not doing business in California, the trust is, and the trust is not required to register. So that just saved you $800 a year for you folks out in California, or people that maybe live somewhere else but were forming buying property in California. So yeah, this can help you save a lot of money in your formation of your entities and these franchise fees that people keep getting hit with. Because if you had 10 properties in 10 different states with 10 different LLCs, you'd be paying franchise fees in 10 states. If you use a land trust, you'd only pay in one state.
Andrew, I think that might answer the most recent question in the Q&A box, right?
It was like perfect timing.
I know.
It was wow.
We were thinking at the same time, the same thing. Okay. I guess Vicky was asking if the LLC components is in the complete or included in the basic package.
The LLC components, I'm not quite sure
Well,
what that
we don't
means.
want anyone to think that we're helping people create LLCs. When
No,
you go ahead, Randy.
well, but you do get the free asset protection consultation with an associate of mine that will give you all the information on setting up an LLC, what's the best state, what the costs are, whether you should be a single member or multi-member, and that's a free bonus. You can talk to him and either set it up yourself or have him set it up for you.
Great. Thanks for clarifying that. So I think this covers all the questions. I'm looking back into the chat to see if I missed anything, but gosh, there were so many that I think were also kind of repeated. So some of you had similar questions there. And Vicky, that would be included with even the basic there if you the referral out.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
you
that is
could
correct.
as part
Yes.
of the basic also. Okay, great. So Andrew, unless you see anything that I missed, I think we covered everything so far, right?
Um,
I'll give you a moment to take a look. In the meantime, let me just remind you all one more time that we will be sending you the links to the courses. We will also be sending you the full recording, the PowerPoint slides. You will get that offer that Mr. Landtrust has so generously offered our members. And I hope that you take advantage of it, because truly, I think, and I still hear it, no matter how many talks we've had, that people still own their real estate in their name. And if you started that way and you just kind of kept going on that route, I don't want you to dig yourself a deeper hole. So the time is yesterday to do this. So please go ahead and take a look. It is so important that you do something to protect yourself before you need it. So, I really can't express that enough. Andrew, was there anything else that you wanted us to cover before we go?
Thank you, Alexandra. There is one, and we do. Mr. Lantrust does ask this question quite a bit. Does the lender allow me to change the title to a land trust? I don't remember this question being asked before, and it's about how you communicate with the lender. Mr. Lantrust, would you care to talk about your own experience with that?
Yeah. Well, it depends. If the property is your personal residence, I alluded to the Garn St. Germain Act, which guarantees you the ability to transfer title without it affecting your loan. So that's on your personal residence. On all your investment property, you have two choices. You can tell the lender you're transferring into a trust, or you can't, or you don't tell them. I don't deal with the big banks like Chase and Bank of America. They've got too many rules and regulations that I don't like. But if you're dealing with them, to be honest with you, they won't even know the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing, and they won't even know that you've transferred title. There's no title police out there looking every single day to see if you transferred title. And if you keep making your mortgage payment, you're pretty much good to go. Now that's the no side. I with my lenders, I just went to all of them and said, I'm doing some estate planning for my family. I would like to put these properties into trust. Do you have a problem with that? And they all said, no, that's fine with me. And they put it in writing that it was okay for me to do that. So those are your two options.
Thanks. That's all I wanted to be sure got covered.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, wonderful. Randy, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. Andrew, you as well. It's been a pleasure having you speak to our group, and I hope to see your faces again. I really think this is an important topic. So, for those of you who've stayed this long, thank you for staying and sticking around. I will be in touch tomorrow, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Andrea. Bye
All
bye.
right, everyone, take care. Bye.